Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine the person you trust most in the world, someone you've built your life around, turns out to be the very person who's been plotting your destruction. What if the one you loved most is the one who tries to take everything from you? In today's story, a family torn apart by betrayal, a mother fighting for her life, and a daughter who must decide what forgiveness really means. But the truth is more complicated than just a simple betrayal. There's a dark secret hidden beneath the surface, something so shocking that it could shatter everything they thought they knew about each other. Stick around, because what happens next will change everything. Let's dive into this incredible journey of love, loss, and the price of justice. Eleanor Hayes stood in the quiet kitchen of her cottage, the warm scent of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies filling the air. The soft hum of her old oven and the gentle clink of dishes were the only sounds in the house, as the late afternoon sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting golden light over the room. Outside, the garden was a riot of color, her roses in full bloom, a reminder of the years she'd spent tending to this peaceful sanctuary. She smiled softly to herself as she set the cooling rack on the countertop, her eyes flicking toward the window where her granddaughter Lily was playing with the dog in the yard. Lily's laughter, bright and innocent, was the sound Eleanor cherished most. It was a reminder of simpler times, of joy unburdened by the world outside. But even in this serene moment, Eleanor's thoughts were heavy with the weight of what she knew her daughter, Samantha, would be facing tonight. Samantha's job as a lawyer meant long hours, stressful cases, and a constant battle to protect the most vulnerable, especially after her tumultuous divorce from David. Eleanor had always admired Samantha's strength, but she could see the toll it was taking on her. The late nights, the missed meals, the absence of the comforting presence of a partner. 3 years had passed since the divorce, and Samantha was still carrying the weight of both motherhood and a demanding career on her shoulders. Eleanor often wondered how much longer her daughter could keep going at this pace before it all came crashing down. Lily ran into the kitchen, her cheeks flushed with excitement, holding something cupped in her small hands. "Grandma, look!" she cried, her blue eyes wide with awe. Eleanor looked up from the counter, her heart swelling with love for her granddaughter. She reached out to take whatever it was Lily had brought her, and her eyes softened when she saw the ladybug, a simple yet beautiful creature. "My, what a beautiful thing," Eleanor said, her voice gentle. "But she might have a family somewhere, sweetheart. Let's put her back where she belongs." Lily's face fell slightly, but she nodded obediently and opened her hands, letting the ladybug flutter away into the wildflowers. "Mom's coming home soon?" Lily said, her voice tinged with a quiet hope. Eleanor's heart clenched. Samantha had been working on a particularly difficult case today, a case that could determine the fate of a victim who'd been torn apart by an abusive partner. Eleanor knew how much this work meant to her daughter, but she couldn't help but worry. Samantha had always been the fighter, the one who never backed down from a challenge, but Eleanor had seen the cracks beginning to show. After Lily had helped her set the table, the three of them sat down for a quiet dinner. Samantha, despite her exhaustion, smiled as she kissed Lily's forehead and commented on the delicious smell of the cookies. The warmth of the family's connection filled the room, and Eleanor felt a fleeting moment of peace. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that something was lurking just beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect lives. After dinner, as Samantha tucked Lily into bed and Eleanor began washing up, the phone rang. The sudden jarring sound startled her, and she froze for a moment before answering. Her hand trembled as she picked up the receiver, her heart already pounding. "Hello, this is Eleanor Hayes," she said, her voice steady despite the growing sense of dread. The voice on the other end was young, too young for the news she was about to deliver. "Mrs. Hayes, this is St. Joseph's Hospital. Your daughter, Samantha Hayes, has been in a car accident. She's currently being treated in the emergency room." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "Is she all right?" Her voice was barely a whisper, a knot of fear tightening in her chest. "We'll have a doctor speak with you when you arrive," the voice said, and Eleanor heard the subtle tremor of concern there. She understood, from her years as a nurse, that this was bad. Without a second thought, she grabbed her keys, rushed to the door, and called out for Lily to stay inside. Eleanor's mind raced as she drove to the hospital, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and helplessness. When she arrived at the emergency room, the air was thick with tension. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the soft murmur of voices, and the beeping of machines created a disorienting symphony. Eleanor barely registered the nurse who led her to a waiting room, her eyes already searching for any sign of her daughter. Minutes felt like hours. And then the doctor entered, a man with dark circles under his eyes, his face drawn and serious. "I'm Dr. Morris," he said, his voice low. "I'm afraid your daughter has sustained serious injuries. She's unconscious, and we've had to perform emergency surgery to stop the bleeding. She's stable for now, but the next 48 hours will be critical." Eleanor's knees nearly buckled beneath her. She reached out to steady herself, her mind racing. A million questions flooded her. Was this just a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? Dr. Morris's next words hit her like a physical blow. "There were signs of trauma to her head and internal injuries. But there's one more thing we need to discuss." Eleanor's pulse quickened. What was it? What else could there be? "The car that hit her. It wasn't a random crash," he continued. "It looks like the driver swerved into her lane deliberately." Now a chill swept through Eleanor. Her hands shook, the weight of the words sinking in, deliberately. "Do you think it was intentional?" Eleanor asked, her voice trembling. "We're investigating that possibility," Dr. Morris replied, his face grim. "We've identified the vehicle, and we're looking into whether this was a targeted attack." As the words sank in, Eleanor felt the familiar gnawing fear creeping back. Was this connected to Samantha's work? Had someone targeted her daughter because of the dangerous cases she took on? Or was there something more personal at play? And then Eleanor remembered something. David, Samantha's ex-husband. Could he have had something to do with this? What was the real reason behind Samantha's accident? Could someone in her past be willing to go so far to hurt her? As Eleanor pieced together the fragments of her thoughts, a sudden realization hit her. This was only the beginning. Samantha's recovery was only part of the story. Eleanor's heart sank as she realized how much darker things could get. Who could she trust? And how deep did this conspiracy go? The next 48 hours would reveal more than just Samantha's fate. The truth about their family and the people hiding in the shadows was about to come to light. Is it possible for a family to heal when it's been shattered by betrayal? What secrets could emerge from the darkest corners of their lives? In the next chapter, the investigation takes a shocking turn, and Eleanor faces the most difficult choice of her life. Would the truth be enough to save her family, or would it destroy them forever? Eleanor sat beside Samantha's bed, the sterile smell of the hospital room overwhelming her senses. The rhythmic beeping of the machines was a constant reminder of how fragile life was, how easily everything could change. Her daughter lay unconscious, connected to a web of tubes and monitors, her once strong and determined face now pale and fragile. The weight of the past few days pressed heavily on Eleanor's chest. The frantic phone call from the hospital, the race to get there, the terrible realization that the accident might not have been an accident at all. It was too much for her heart to bear. And yet, as she sat in the quiet of the ICU, her mind kept racing back to one thought. David. Had he really done this? Could the man who once vowed to love Samantha, the father of her child, really want to kill her? The very idea seemed impossible, yet the evidence was mounting. He had been in the hospital room, a strange man in white, the suspicious injection marks on Samantha's side. They all pointed to him. It wasn't just a bitter divorce anymore. This was something much darker. Eleanor's heart clenched as she remembered the years of their marriage, their fights, the bitterness, the love that had turned into resentment. But what had pushed David to this? What kind of man did it take to plan such a thing? As a nurse, Eleanor had seen her fair share of darkness in people, emotional wounds, hidden traumas, destructive patterns. But this was something else entirely. It was beyond her comprehension. Just as her thoughts spiraled, the door to the room opened and Dr. Morris entered, his face grave. Eleanor stood, instinctively putting her hand on Samantha's, needing the touch, needing to feel some connection to her daughter even in this uncertain space. Mrs. Hayes, Dr. Morris began, his voice low. There's been a development. Eleanor's heart skipped. What is it? Is she stable, Dr. Butt? Morris cut in, his tone measured. But we found something. There are signs that Samantha was sedated before the crash. It's possible someone drugged her to make the accident more likely. His words hit like a punch to the stomach. Eleanor felt her knees go weak, and she grabbed the edge of the bed to steady herself. Sedated. Someone had drugged her daughter. Her mind raced. Was this really David's doing? Was it a deliberate, calculated move? Eleanor felt sick to her core. The mother inside her wanted to scream, to confront the man who had broken her daughter's heart and now seemed willing to destroy her completely. But the nurse in her, the years of training and understanding of human frailty, told her to be careful, to gather the facts, to wait for clarity. Who did this? Eleanor whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. Dr. Morris hesitated. We're still investigating, but it's possible that the drugs came from someone in her inner circle. The timing is too coincidental. We're analyzing her blood work now. Eleanor nodded numbly, her mind reeling. If David wasn't the one who did this, who could it be? Was there someone else who had access to Samantha? Someone who wanted to hurt her? She thought of the cases Samantha had been working on: domestic violence, corporate corruption, people with power, people who would stop at nothing to protect themselves. Eleanor felt a cold chill crawl up her spine. As if on cue, the door opened again, and a police officer entered. He looked young, with dark hair and a somber expression. Eleanor could tell from his demeanor that this wasn't a routine visit. Mrs. Hayes, we've been reviewing the hospital's security footage, he said, his eyes briefly flicking toward Samantha. We've identified the man who visited your daughter's room. It's David. The floor seemed to fall away beneath Eleanor's feet. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It wasn't just a twisted thought in the back of her mind. David had been here. He had been in the room with her daughter. Eleanor felt a surge of anger so fierce it almost overwhelmed her. She gripped the edge of Samantha's bed harder, trying to steady herself, trying to keep her composure. Why? Eleanor managed to choke out. Why would he do this? The officer paused before answering. It's complicated. The investigators are still putting together the full story, but it seems that David was trying to gain custody of Emma. We've uncovered some disturbing details, Mrs. Hayes. It appears he may have planned to kill Samantha so that he could take Emma. Eleanor's world shattered in an instant. She wanted to scream, to shout at the injustice of it all, but the words caught in her throat. Her heart ached for Emma, for the innocent child who was caught in the middle of this horrific mess. How had things come to this? Had she failed her family somehow? Had she not protected Samantha enough? Or had she simply not seen the danger lurking right in front of her? The officer continued, We've arrested David. We're investigating further, but he's already been charged with attempted murder. Eleanor's mind swirled as the officer spoke. She had spent years protecting her family, building a life that was as safe as she could make it, and yet somehow everything had been torn apart. Her daughter, the woman she had raised with so much love and care, had been targeted by the one person she should have been able to trust. And now, as she looked at Samantha's fragile form, Eleanor realized something else. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It wasn't just about putting David behind bars. It was about protecting Emma, keeping her safe from the fallout of this horror. She couldn't let Emma grow up with the same scars that Samantha had. She couldn't let her face the same dangers. With that realization, a deep, unshakable determination settled over Eleanor. She would fight for her family. She would fight to keep them whole, no matter what it took. The battle was far from over. How do you feel about the devastating twist revealed in the investigation? Can you truly forgive someone for such a betrayal? As Eleanor stepped out of the hospital room, her heart hardened with resolve, ready to face whatever came next. But deep down, she knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. There were still more secrets to uncover and more enemies to face, and she wouldn't stop until she had the answers. In the next chapter, Eleanor will discover the depth of the conspiracy surrounding her family. Will she be able to protect Emma, or will the past continue to haunt them? Eleanor sat in the dimly lit living room of her cottage, her hands trembling as she held the letter in her lap. It was from David, the man who had once been her son-in-law, who had once promised to love Samantha until the end of time, the man who had nearly destroyed everything. The letter was short, but its words sliced through Eleanor's chest with brutal precision. David was in prison now, and he had sent this letter to Samantha, apologizing for everything he had done. He claimed he had changed, that he regretted his actions, and that he was willing to do whatever it took to make amends. Eleanor let out a shaky breath and folded the letter with shaking hands. She had never seen David like this. The man who had manipulated and deceived his way through Samantha's life, the man who had plotted her daughter's death, could he truly change? Samantha had told her that she would not tell Emma the full truth of what happened. She didn't want her daughter to grow up with the heavy burden of knowing her father had been capable of such monstrous actions. Samantha had been broken by what David had done, but she was determined to rise from the ashes, to become something stronger, something better than the man who had torn her apart. The quiet sound of Emma's footsteps brought Eleanor back to the present. She looked up to see her granddaughter standing at the doorway, a gentle smile playing on her lips. At just 9 years old, Emma had shown more courage than most adults, more grace than anyone could have expected from a child her age. "Grandma, can we talk?" Emma asked, her voice soft but steady. Eleanor put the letter down and beckoned her over. Emma climbed onto the couch next to her, resting her head on Eleanor's shoulder. It was a comfort to Eleanor to know that no matter how much the world had thrown at them, her family was still here, still standing strong. "Mom's getting better, right?" Emma asked, her voice quiet, almost as if she were afraid to ask the question at all. Eleanor's heart swelled with pride as she gently stroked Emma's hair. "Yes, sweetheart, your mom is getting better every day. She's strong, just like you." Emma's blue eyes searched her grandmother's face, filled with a wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. "I'm glad she's better. I don't want anything bad to happen to her anymore." The words hit Eleanor harder than she had expected. For a moment she was lost in thought, her mind swirling with memories of the last few months, of the accident, of the fear, of the uncertainty. She had fought for her daughter, and she had fought for Emma, but it had been the love between them that had truly saved them. It was their bond, their resilience, that had kept them going. "I know, darling," Eleanor whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But you know what? No matter what happens, we'll always have each other. No one can take that away from us." Emma smiled, a soft, sincere smile that warmed Eleanor's heart. "I know, Grandma, and I'm not afraid anymore. I know that love is stronger than anything bad that happens." Eleanor pulled Emma closer, holding her tightly as the weight of everything they had been through settled over her like a blanket. She thought of Samantha, who was still recovering, still healing, but determined to find her way. She thought of the strength they had all found within themselves, the way they had rebuilt their lives, piece by piece, from the wreckage. And then, as if on cue, the front door opened. Samantha stepped inside, her presence filling the room with a quiet grace. She looked different, somehow, lighter, freer. The strain that had once been etched into her features was beginning to fade, replaced by a calm determination. Samantha looked at her mother and daughter, her two rocks, and smiled. "What's this? A family meeting?" Eleanor stood up and walked toward her daughter, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We were just talking about how lucky we are to have each other," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "How we've made it through everything together. and we always will." Samantha pulled back slightly, her eyes softening as she looked at Eleanor and then at Emma. "I never realized how much I needed to hear that," she said quietly, her voice catching. "I've been so focused on fixing everything, on making everything right again, that I forgot what really matters. What matters is this: us, together." The three of them stood there for a long moment, wrapped in the warmth of each other's presence. For the first time in a long while, there was no fear, no anxiety, no lingering doubts. They had been through hell, but they had survived it. And they would continue to survive, because their love for each other was unwavering. But just as Eleanor thought they had finally reached the peace they had so desperately craved, the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a call about Samantha's condition or about David. It was a call that would change everything once more. Eleanor picked up the phone, her hand shaking as she answered. "Hello? Mrs. Hayes, this is Detective Reed. I have an update for you on the investigation into your daughter's accident." Eleanor's heart dropped into her stomach. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. She exchanged a quick glance with Samantha and Emma, her breath catching in her throat. "We've uncovered new evidence," Detective Reed continued. "We've discovered that David was not acting alone. There was someone else involved, someone who orchestrated the entire thing." Eleanor's world began to spin. "What do you mean? Who else?" "We don't have all the details yet, but it seems that the plan to hurt Samantha wasn't just about gaining custody of Emma. There's a larger conspiracy at play, one that could involve people David was working with. We're investigating further, but we need you to come in for a statement. The situation is more complex than we initially thought." Eleanor's hands tightened around the phone, her heart pounding. It wasn't over. It was never going to be over. The truth about David's betrayal, about everything that had been hidden, was still coming to light. But as she looked at Samantha and Emma, her daughter, her granddaughter, Eleanor knew one thing for sure. They had each other. And no matter what came next, they would face it together. How do you think Eleanor will react to the new evidence about David? Can Samantha truly escape the shadows of her past, or is there more darkness to uncover? The weight of the truth hung heavy in the air, but Eleanor refused to back down. She had already faced the worst, and she would do whatever it took to protect her family. This fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. What will the next chapter bring? Will the Hayes family finally find peace, or will the storm continue to rage? Stay tuned for more. What are your thoughts on how this story unfolded? What part of it touched you the most? If you enjoyed this story, comment 100 below. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Feel free to share this story with your friends. Thank you for watching the Life Stories channel.